Just like devil fruits and haki, Luffy's gears have always been one of the most popular things in One Piece, and now that Luffy Gear 5 has debuted, it has reinforced that Luffy's powers are the best. During the Enies Lobby arc, Luffy invented his Gear 2nd and Gear 3rd. Following the 2-year time skip, Luffy came up with the idea of Gear 4th with multiple forms. While all these power-ups were incredible and enabled him to take on some of the most powerful people on the seas, he didn't truly hit his peak until the Wano Country arc. In the fight against Kaido, Luffy finally tapped into what is his strongest transformation of all time and supposedly him at his peak, Gear 5. So, what is Luffy's Gear 5? Luffy has developed all his gears based around the rubbery properties of his devil fruit. Gear 2nd makes use of his rubbery body to pump blood faster through his body and increase his physical abilities drastically. Gear 3rd sees him inflate his rubbery bones with air to gain the limbs of a giant and use devastating attacks. With Gear 4th, Luffy takes things a step further by incorporating haki with his devil fruit and combining them together. By doing so, Luffy is able to increase the tension of rubber and use the power of compression and elasticity in combat to pull off some of the most incredible things such as flying through the air. However, with Gear 5, Luffy doesn't make use of his basic devil fruit abilities at all. Gear 5 is actually based on the true nature of Luffy's devil fruit, the real name of which is the Hito Hito no Mi model, Nika. In the Wano Country arc, Luffy managed to awaken his devil fruit after being defeated by Kaido for the 3rd time. Somehow, this caused his devil fruit to finally break through its limits and awaken. Since Luffy's devil fruit is actually a mythical 𝚤𝚒 instead of a paramecia, it granted him a completely new transformation instead, and typical of Luffy, he ended up naming it Gear 5. In this form, Luffy gains a completely white transformation and takes on an appearance similar to that of the sun god Nika. Most importantly, Luffy becomes a warrior of liberation in this state, as his body gains even more freedom and he is able to fight with as much creativity as he possibly can. So why Gear 5 is Luffy's peak? Gear 5 is, undoubtedly, Luffy at his very strongest. Upon awakening this power, Luffy noticed that his heart sounded different, and to us, it was made clear by Zunsha that Luffy's heart produces a sound known as the drums of liberation. This unique heartbeat signifies Luffy using the peak of his abilities. When Luffy's heart beats like a drum, it's a sign that he's channeling into the awakened powers of his devil fruit. As explained by the Gorosei, this means Luffy's rubber body is much tougher than before and even more rubbery. At the same time, he fights with even more freedom, making his devil fruit the most ridiculous power in the entire world of One Piece. Being a mythical 𝚤𝚒, Luffy gains a transformation that is much stronger than anything that he's accessed before. It is only in this form that he is able to utilize the true powers of the Hito Hito no Mi model, Nika. Once used, Luffy's rubber body gains tremendous freedom and he fights in a manner that Kaido described to be straight out of a comic strip. Luffy becomes much more cartoonish and can transfer this cartoonish effect to other people as well. A good look at this episode was given to us when Luffy fought Kaido, grabbed him by the tail to thrash him around. At the same time, he can pull off impossible feats such as handling his running so fast in the air that he leaves fire tracks behind him. Luffy's rubber is much tougher than before and he can easily manipulate the size of his body without even using any air. At his best, he can even turn himself into a giant with ease, which just goes to show how ridiculous his devil fruit truly is. Perhaps, one of the most strange things about Luffy's Gear 5 is that it also allows him to affect his immediate surroundings with rubber, which is a trait of the paramecia types. Despite being a mythical 𝚤𝚒, Luffy can achieve this due to the special nature of his devil fruit, something that even Kaido noticed in combat. Luffy can immediately turn his surroundings into rubber, but he doesn't just stop there. He can even turn other people into rubber upon touching them, which no substance-based paramecia devil fruit awakening user has achieved so far. Katakuri could turn his surroundings into mochi but not Luffy, and just like him, Doflamingo was able to turn Dressrosa into strings and not affect the people around him. In Luffy's fight against Kaido, he showed the ability to turn everything he touches into rubber, which helps him fight with even more freedom. Luffy could turn Kaido into rubber and hurt him from the inside. He could even expand his arms from his eyes to catapult himself out of his mouth. What's more, Luffy even turned Kaido into a jumping rope, which is utterly ridiculous, given that he's a Yonko. By the looks of it, Luffy could even turn inanimate things, such as lightning, into rubber when in Gear 5. Towards the end of One Piece chapter 1046, Luffy showed the ability to grab a bolt of lightning itself by presumably turning it into rubber. Despite Kaido's tremendous power, facing off against such a monster in combat is quite difficult. Luffy's Gear 5 lets him pull off some of the most ridiculous feats in the story, such as making his fist as big as an entire island, as is expected of a power termed to be the most ridiculous ability in One Piece. Without a doubt, Luffy is at his very peak and his abilities have put him on the same level as the Yonko and the legends such as Whitebeard and Roger, if not higher. And that's all for today. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I also asked you to subscribe to help us. It will also help us to grow more, and if you like, please subscribe.